Good afternoon. Chris, the principal here to discuss my usual topics of culture and education, but through the lens of a very sad event that recently happened, which is the Nashville shooting. And I'm going to, at last, really go into the weeds about this constant obsession over gender theory. And like you see in the title, I'm going to discuss how much of a cult it has become. I would say it is closer to a religious cult, and it's quite scary, but for not the reasons that many people think. You know, it is concerning that they are starting to turn to violence. Their stupid Day of Vengeance was canceled because of some reason. I don't know what exactly. Apparently it's a threat, but who knows what their truth is. But I really think that it's time for us to do a little bit of a gut check here. Right here, I have a picture of a dictionary, which is from, I'd say, 1938, around there. It is Webster's Dictionary, and as you can clearly see, you have the definition of gender be a synonym for biological sex. Not even something connected to it, it's a synonym. But if you look at Google and you keep scrolling down, they have inserts saying that's just something you identify or feel that is part of you, because we all know why they're doing that. Now, what the heck's going on here? And my problem is we have a serious integrity problem that has been going on for a long time. I would say it really started kicking off in the 60s and 70s in the academic spheres. There are people that are buying into or purposefully selling out to a lie. And that lie is moral relativity. That is the true root of everything going on right now. Moral relativity is a dangerous thing that people still play footsies with because they're either indifferent, they have an agenda, or they're cowards. And what went on right here with Audrey Hale was an example of evil. It was not an example of mental disorder. It is an example of evil. Now, if you don't want to take my word for it, check out Dr. Todd Grande's recent video on what happened. And he's a good psychologist. I don't agree with every take of his, but he came out strong and swinging on this. And he cannot find a psychological justification for innocence. And neither can I. There used to be a time in our world where we saw good as good and evil as evil and sin as sin. And now we're playing our little games because it tickles our imaginations, it tickles our agendas, and it tickles our cowardice to just get along. And why? Because it's on us. It's not just on these people who get their little rush whenever they feel special, which obviously that's a big part of this. But it's really on us as a society. And many of the this woke stuff came from years of arrogant liberalism. Arrogant liberals, arrogant progressives that have started to believe that their thinking is exalted and maybe the next horizon for humanity, and thinking that morality can be redefined. All right. Now, that may not be the first time you've heard someone on YouTube rant about that. I'm going to go further into this. Okay. I'm not just going to talk about how we need to return to God and all that. I'm going to go into some specifics here. Another thing you can see is here's a picture of Audrey Hale. And this was her before she really got involved. And the fact that people would lie to themselves and call her by her new pronouns and pretend that this was not a woman and it still was a woman when she did this and forevermore will be a woman is so pathetic. And when you look at the pictures of her as she was identifying as whatever, the fact that people look at this before and that after, and then say to themselves, wow, I can't believe that he would do this, is so disingenuous and dishonest, it is baffling. But it's not just disingenuous in that front. It's disingenuous that you could not, if you're an educated person, possibly entertain that this is clearly someone who is disturbed and sucked into a religious cult. Because that's what this is. I mean, a lot of these liberals, it's really sad. I'm only 30 years old, but you're talking about people who are defending this, who have lived through the days of Charles Manson and the UFO cults and many other cults, and they're going to act like this isn't a cult. This is a lie we're doing. We're not just ignorant. This is a lie. The lie is that the far left is just like everyone else, and these are not completely emotionally and intellectually and spiritually unstable and immature people trying to work out their problems through some sort of strange, unconscious self-therapy, because we have let them down and they have let themselves down by acting like such babies. I'm not putting blame on just one person. I'm putting the blame on everyone. I'm pointing fingers like everywhere, like South Park. I don't really believe in an innocent victim. I believe that everyone gets a part of the blame, some more than others. Okay? So that's my opening on that. But there's a lot more going on here. Okay? The first main pillar of this nonsense. Now, this I really can't put a timeline on. The timeline could be from the beginning of time. It could always have been a flaw. But definitely the first pillar of this nonsense and what led to someone doing such sick and evil acts is false compassion. False compassion and fake mercy is what another way of saying it is behind a lot of people looking the other way or joining these things or supporting them from the sidelines and cheering the LGBT thing or the BLM thing or the Antifa thing or whatever sick thing that the left does. That is the reason. And yes, facts don't care about your feelings, but I would also like to add, your feelings are not necessarily love. That's the other side of this. Has any one of these people with all their love equals love stuff read Plato and any other great philosophers who go into depth about the eternal beauty defining love and truth defining love? I'm sure they haven't. So they haven't even read things which would clearly point towards, if you could follow the great thinking of men like Plato and other writers in the church and outside of the church, clearly would point to the fact that you need to be humble, that love is not as simple as throwing it around. This is the most meaningful word in all of existence. Love is the most meaningful argument. The most important argument is the definition of love for all of humanity. And to think people can throw it around just shows how ridiculous we've become. But really, like, if you're seeing someone shooting up heroin and you're going to tell them that, oh, it's okay, I don't want to hurt their feelings, you define yourself who you are, we love you love bomb them. That's the technique of the cult, by the way. Well, obviously, I think most people actually know that that's wrong. And I think most people here know that it's wrong. But they're lying to themselves to try to soothe their consciences instead of owning up to the fact that they're cowards and either stepping out of the way for someone who can actually challenge them or growing a spine themselves and challenging these people. Because, no, enforcing a delusion that destroys someone is not love. Now, moving on, there's more underneath all of that. What's underneath all of that is cowardice, like I said. And the cowardice comes from there not being any moral, godly objective here, right? Why do we live our lives, people? Do we really live our lives because we need to be safe, have our nice comfort, and leave everyone else the hell alone. I really think it's time for us to start looking at that. It may be way past time to do that. We have dead children, and there are people that are dead. Innocent little children are dead. I'm not even going to get into the other sick things the left has done, abortion, because of our cowardice and our weird secular priorities here. Okay? Parents, you have to wake up. Citizens of the West, if you're hopefully still in a free country, you can do anything, it's time to wake up. Priests and bishops, you are really in hot water if you're not waking up and speaking up about this. And just anyone of goodwill who has the decency to believe that maybe I should question the current narrative should be speaking up. Teachers, you're also in hot water for going along with this. You need to wake up and repent. This is serious. And it's not just serious because you're enabling this, but because you are like wanting to be this passive observer in life while the whole house burns down. And that is sick. All right? It is an indifference and lukewarm, sitting on the fence is sick. It is not even remotely close to virtuous. Not a little virtuous, not, oh, they're okay. No, it's not. It's not a virtuous thing. You're not a good person doing that. Okay, so let's fix this now. Hopefully there's still some time. Now, the other problem is that we pamper the young too much. Why do we pamper the young too much? All right. Now, yes, there is the flip side. There's too much abuse going on. But like I said in the previous podcast, usually the abuse isn't physical. That's still a rarer thing to see. But the grand majority of people pamper kids like they're baby goo goo gaga babies when they're grown 14 to 16-year-olds. Oh, my kids, they're just... Stop it. Stop it with the sweetie pie, my little sweetie pie stuff. Your little sweetie pie is watching pornography, okay? Can you just wake up a little in there and get over yourself, get over the Norman Rockwell painting that you have of your family? If, in the age of abject loneliness, COVID lockdowns, internet porn, groomers in schools and the internet and the woke media and the woke music videos and the sexualized everything, really, let's wake up, all right? Stop the silly little smiles. I see every parent has a goofy fake smile. There shouldn't be no smiles right now. There should be stern army boots on mentality. All right? Get out of this thing of, oh, all is well in the Shire. This is not the Shire anymore. So, and I think the people of Nashville are waking up to this. Why, these kids would not be dead if we had, as a culture, laughed the gender theory and other things off the stage. This is so ridiculous, right? This is the most ridiculous thing yet. If there's anything that should have united the right and the left, it should have been, what in the heck are you talking about? Gender isn't real, it's a construct? Are you kidding me? Who taught you this? Who is the idiot we need to disbar from any sort of degree they have? Oh, we're going to take it from Dr. Jordan Peterson. We're not going to take it from the lunatic who came up with gender theory. Let's think about that one for a second. Okay? Another thing that is really at the heart of this is the academic world and the academic world in the church has apostatized from God as the ultimate truth and submitting yourself to God as the ultimate truth. And I forgot to link this, I'm sorry, but you can check out Lex Friedman's, he's like a Russian computer scientist, interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson. And I know Dr. Jordan Peterson isn't the only intellectual, but I'd say he's one of the braver intellectuals who isn't afraid of talking about things that really cut to the heart of the matter. Lex Friedman was a good interviewer, and excuse me, he did an interview about a few months ago on one of the clips was being more afraid of hell than death, right? And then another one was about the existence of God, right? Is God real? And Dr. Jordan Peterson made a very good point. A very good point is that when the universities were formed by the church, with the likes of St. Thomas Aquinas and others paving the way for a renewal in critical thinking, they saw God as the ultimate truth. Okay? They saw God as the ultimate truth which should be sought with humility. We can only see it partially. And believing in ultimate truth helps scientists seek and challenge their biases. It's supposed to be a humbling thing. It is not supposed to be this thing where you can publish a stupid paper with your stupid academic friends because you have a wild imagination and you interviewed about 15 people in a study, and oh yeah, I think I'm part woman, I feel kind of like, and then you have all of your woke professors who are in on it peer review it or not even challenge it, and just to justify your degree or to justify your nonsense. And because everyone worships and bows down to this altar of degrees and universities, which is another problem, that's called appeal to authority fallacy. Everyone kind of thinks like a communist. Oh, that professor's a professor. He must be as smart as Albert freaking Einstein. We must put him, this idiot, on the level of, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the Nobel Peace Prize winners of the olden times. He must be on the level of Carl Jung. Hello, this is ridiculous. This is another mistake. This is like an accidental Marxism we're doing. If a professor comes out saying the moon is cheese, he needs to be called out and laughed out of the university. Why did we not laugh all of this gender theory out of the public square? If we had done this, I guarantee you these children probably would not be dead. And I'll tell you why. So I went to a field trip yesterday, interesting timing, with the high school of the school that I work at. And we spent the whole day, and as we were coming to the train station, some of these transgender, non-binary protesters, you can see them a mile away, they're all tall white dudes. I don't understand this. And the creepy thing is, a lot of them look like Bruce Jenner. It's kind of funny to me, right? The original guy who started a lot of this, why are they all the guys that look like Bruce Jenner, who could probably be triathlon athletes? Why are there so many of them in this community? It's hilarious to me. Is there some sort of undercurrent of people that wish they could have been athletes but couldn't make it? Who are white guys who are really they're all joining the gender movement so they can compete against women. I don't know. But they were there. They were coming off the train tracks, and I saw them, and and the first thing I noticed was that these were seemingly really well-off people. Some of them had their BDSM gothic, I'm super special, stuff on. It looked like they had to pay a lot of money for some of the clothing they were wearing. They all had their hair dyed, and they just I don't know. They just looked like, flamboyant gay guys to me, but I think they were non-binary, which is a thing which apparently you don't even need to have a surgery for to say you're on. I could do it. I could just say, well, I feel like a girl inside, or some sort of semi-spiritual experience happened where I think I'm a girl inside my body. And I don't have to change anything. I just have to say it, and I get my government pension in Canada, apparently. But one of them came up to us because he saw a bunch of young people, and he got all excited. And he said, oh, are you guys with the protest? Now, if there wasn't a day of vengeance I would have been a little bit nicer to this confused young man, but I had to put on my scary, face, and I sternly said no, in a very confronting manner. And then he tried again. Oh, well, we're gonna have. We really are not interested, sir. And you just have to do that in that environment, in an unpredictable environment. You have to protect kids, and so I scared him off, and he went off, and I just noticed, it really is sad. I do agree that we should have some empathy here. Audrey Hale, has that same look. These are clearly very lonely people. Okay, they're very lonely, disturbed people, and that's my point. Oh, it's gonna hurt. It hurts them bad to be ignored, but if we had ignored the stuff or confronted it or done both would have been preferable. They would have scattered in the wind because this is clearly a cry for help. Okay, these movements are clearly, there's a lot of lonely people. And it's so pathetic. I mean, again, we come from the culture of Manson and, Woodstock New Age cults. And we all know what this is, right? There's been studies upon studies and investigations to what leads someone to joining a kooky, weird religious cult. And people know that there's a profile of it's always the weak. The cult leader or maybe the ideology sucks in weak-minded people who have no sense of belonging. Right? I mean, it is a textbook case of that. And so it's really something that we have to take we have to take on our backs. What is going on in society where people are this empty that they live out such a lie, and it's really not even that impressive of a cult. I mean, it really like pronouns and dyeing your hair is a pretty pathetic cult. It really does not have much power on its own. I really don't believe this. They're not using intoxicating drugs. There is no real advanced theology or strange conspiracy theory about the world outside of, you could be identifying as something, and if it makes you feel good, do it. Right? So this really has to open up another can of worms, which is this postmodernism thing. Postmodernism is this thing. My friend said a lot of it started in art school. She was in art school. But it's this idea that the modern era isn't advanced enough. We can question everything because if some things were wrong, like if we used to believe in slavery and if we used to believe in women being property, then maybe anything could be wrong. Maybe gender itself, maybe, and that's another place as to where a lot of this stuff came from. It's this endless, immature rebellion. I really think the earliest I can see this happening was when we started kumbayaing with Marxism. Marxism, I think, and even though it was back in the early 1900s, before I was born, before when Grandpa was in his prime, or even earlier, Marxism and those kinds of thinkers would subtly put emotional bias into the wording. Oh, your boss is an oppressor because, allegedly some of the way capitalism works is that you don't get your due. Yes, there are robber barons, but, what's with the oppressor thing, to kind of reword things. And then they kind of go into their utopian la-la land, right? I think that's where it all started. And then once people accepted Marx, you have this religious kind of like high. The intellectual, especially a creative intellectual, can have a pseudo-spiritual almost high when they have their Eureka moments. When Archimedes said Eureka, you get a almost unlike an enlightenment. when you think you run into the truth. The fine print, though, is that most people aren't smart people like Archimedes. Most intellectuals aren't as smart as Archimedes, Newton, and Mozart. Okay? That's the problem. Maybe another part of it is, why is the university so soft? You need to be smacked a little bit. You are not Archimedes. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between someone who has a Eureka moment and actually proves and blows everyone's mind out of the water that he's run into a serious truth, versus a Eureka moment where you dye your hair and you have a psychological disorder and then you write a paper about it because, what happened there? There's a difference between crazy and a genius. Even though they may seem a little bit different, can we please start making some distinctions here? So I really don't get it. Now, some people are in between. Some people are kind of like deluded and also smart, and they're not adjusted, right? Some people aren't even eccentric. They are more like deluded by their own intellectual pride, right? For example, positivism. That means this idea that only the visible, material, scientific things can be said to be true, and the invisible, moral things are all relative, right? David Hume and Immanuel Kant probably started that. And that might be another root of all of this, right? This idea that, we can only prove the material, and so let's let all of the art students, especially that Austrian guy over there, who's writing something about Jews in his diary, let's let all the art students and the philosophy and the political science, all of that, that's all for people that aren't smart enough to get down to the hard science. And that's not that important. Whoops. So you mean to tell me that the theory of gravity and quantum mechanics and all of that, by the way, which are always being reevaluated by the actually really good scientists, you don't know everything about the natural world. We're always learning something new. There always needs to be a leap of faith and humility in that, as Jordan Peterson told Lex Friedman. But you mean to tell me that objective morality cannot be tested? You mean to tell me we can't look into history and look into society today and say, maybe we can test that there are objective morals and that there is a human condition and a divine order to things? I beg to differ, sir, because I'm looking around at the world today and I'm thinking, looking at how things work out when people throw that away, it doesn't really end that well. There seems to be overwhelming evidence to the contrary of this stuff, right? What about logic? What about math? What about the logic and math that inspired the beginning of modern science? Isn't that interesting? The first serious scientist was inspired from the transcendental logical thinkers that were not scientists. Aristotle took from the logic and the philosophy and theology of Plato and Socrates, who were spiritual men. They believed in a kind of God. And not just, they believed in God, and so we should respect people that believe in God and respect the scientists. I'm saying that without the idea of a transcendent God, the logic of a divinely ordered universe falls apart. Okay? So I guess that's where, I'm trying to keep it brief here. I know I went down a rabbit hole, but all of this non-binary stuff, all of this strange stuff is not just mental illness, because, by the way, she didn't really have much of a history of mental. She only had an emotional disorder. But we have, in criminal psychology, an evil scale, if you didn't know. And it isn't enough to just plead insanity. There are evil people, there are criminally insane people, and then there are just benevolent insane people. And she might not even qualify for criminally insane. She was seduced into doing something evil through moral weakness. That's my analysis of this, and Dr. Todd Grande's analysis of this. But we're not dealing really with, we're all these crazy people. We're dealing with something else. We're dealing with the case of Frankenstein's monster. We're dealing with the case of the evil Nazi and Japanese scientists who messed with people and other evil scientists. We are dealing with playing God. We are playing God for different reasons. We are playing God because we don't want to confront people because we're cowards. We're playing God because we think it'd be cool to mess with gender or sex or the family, nuclear family, or we think it'd be interesting. And we're playing God because we have in our minds our own little religion forming of, well, actually, the way to save someone is to just make them feel better about themselves, which is a lie. And so now we have Frankenstein's monster running around, but it's our monster. We decided that this is the way to salvation for this poor person. And by the way, we all need a little salvation. We're all messed up. Okay? This is our sin. And until we recognize that this is a horrible progression of arrogance that led to this and led to the arrogant people in the far left, then we're not going anywhere that's serious. And the society will just keep running to the same old problems. Again, this is not the first cult that ever has formed, ever in the world, okay? This wasn't coming out of nowhere. This is not the first subculture of lonely people trying to fit in. And it won't be the last until we start having serious discussions on what to do about this, so it never happens again. If you're someone stuck in this, I plead with you, just like how I have to plead with God and myself, to consider that you are not as strong as you think. Please disavow yourself of this pop psych self-love, you're so strong, you're so wonderful thing, especially the ladies out there. Human potential is different from where we are at. Yes, people have the potential to become very strong and heroic, but to get there, you need to go through some trials and tribulations of great faith and courage. And we are not there. I'm not there. Okay? We are very weak. If you need tweets and views and whatever to feel good about yourself, you're a critical mass. You are teetering at the edge. Forget the binary stuff and non-binary stuff. Just the fact that we have people, normal people that need this to feel okay, means that we are at red alert DEFCON 1 and we are headed for a horrible crash. We are falling as we speak. This is not normal. This never was normal. There was a time when people didn't need all of this attention. What you need to do is you need to get out of this collectivist thinking. You need to find a good Christian group that cares. You can join the group here, the Humble Holy Lady. You need to get in touch with God. You need healing fast. And hopefully there's a good counselor out there that won't lie to you. Because this collectivist thing is for the birds. This constantly needing other people's attention is detrimental. And honestly, this is the last lie we bought into, which is that filling ourselves with all this stuff makes us feel more complete or makes us more complete. We are finding out that it is actually detachment from the world And it is radical individualism with God that sends you towards happiness. It's still going to be painful, but I prefer purgatory than hell. So let's put on our thinking caps. This stream is not to just point fingers, oh, those trans, oh, those what. No, I am opening up the discussion. What is wrong with our mentality? And what can we do about it? And let's have, it's a hilarious Wikipedia article, but let's have a counter postmodernism. Instead of, let's question all of the things that we've known for thousands of years because we have fruity imaginations, let's do the opposite. Let's question the fruity, out of touch, deluded, prideful intellectual who goes around lording over everyone else, thinking he's or she is a god because they think they're so smart. And let's knock them off their goofy unicorn horse, and including those Marxists. And let's say enough with the arrogance. And so that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Let me see if there's any comments. Okay, no comments today. I hope you liked it. And again, I'm trying to open up the discussion here. I will continue. Next time, I will go into more detail. I will dissect a Jordan Peterson video clip, which I find very important. And I'll go more into this problem in the way academics are thinking. Take care, everyone. God bless. And I'll talk to you next time.